Welcome back to the Canadian Undergraduate Experience podcast, where I'm going to be chatting with current university students about their admissions process, student life, academics, and more. Before we jump right into today's call, I want to quickly mention that all guests on the show speak only from their own experience and cannot speak for other people in their programs or schools. Obviously, you should never make any important decisions based solely off of these episodes or any one source, and you should always make sure to do your own research. With that out of the way, today's guest is Rachel Gilham. Rachel goes to Trent University and is studying environmental science and biology. Let's give her a call. Hi, Rachel. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Where are you living right now?
I'm in Peterborough in my student house, so.
Is that close to campus?
Yeah, it's only about like a 10-minute bus ride away, so it's pretty sweet. Not that I'm really going to campus right now, but.
Oh, true. Have you lived like there, close to campus, all of your years at Trent?
I did my first year in res, and then in second year I moved here.
Ooh.
So I like the spot a lot though, and so I didn't feel the need to switch to a different student house or anything.
How did you find that spot?
I did about 0% of the work, which was very nice. I had very friends in res were very concerned about finding a house for the next year, and I had not even given it a second thought. So my friend essentially said, "Do you want to live together?" And I was like, "Sure." And she was like, "I found this house. Do you want to go look at it?" And I was like, "That sounds good." And she was like, "Okay." So we went. I was like, "That looks like a pretty solid house," having never looked at a house before in my life. And then she was like, "Let's email the landlords and say we want it." And I was like, all right. And that was about all my input into the
You had
process.
a super active role in that process.
Yeah, but it worked out because she was, I don't know, she just had like a sense for good houses and stuff, and she picked a really good one, so.
How early in the year did people like start looking for houses in Peterborough?
We were very early because, as I said, my friend was like kind of concerned about it, so I think she started looking in like November. Mm-hmm. And then we signed the lease maybe like halfway through December. But I know most people will start like looking in December and then sign like January, February.
Yeah, because I've heard in some student cities, like in Kingston at Queen's, they do it so early because it's like all students. But is Peterborough a lot of students or not so much?
Yeah, it is. So I think probably each year it gets a bit more difficult to find a house. So I think there is something to be said about starting earlier because then you just have more options available. But on the other side of that, you also, if you're like my situation on res, you want to be able to find people that you actually think you want to live with. But if you've only known them since September, that's kind of like a weird tightrope to walk. So you want to like find that sweet spot in between getting a house early enough, but also like knowing the people you're going to move in with. Because we had a big falling out with the people we were supposed to live with.
No.
And there was this whole thing where we had to like, they dropped the lease and they had to find their own house and stuff like that. And it all worked out, but I think that's a good kind of cautionary tale to not just jump onto the first ship in the harbor, I guess.
Yeah, because I guess your friends could probably change a lot within the first year. Like, yeah. Where did you find that you ended up making most of your friends that have stuck with you?
In first year, it was definitely all about, like, rep. And this person is my friend that I met in class, come meet them, and, like, that kind of thing at, like, parties and whatnot. But then I'm in fourth year, so, like, second and third year, it's definitely, you make friends in your classes more and in your labs. Especially because Trent is a smaller school, you have repeats of, like, the same people in your labs all the time, so you get to know them, and because labs, just weird stuff happens, so you gain kind of, like, fun inside jokes and stuff like that, so, yeah.
Okay, I want to hear a little bit more. You said you did live in residence. Which residence did you live in?
Yeah, so I lived at Lady Eaton College, which is the best, I will say. So there's the housing at Trent is interesting because it's a college system, which means basically it's like the best way to like make an analogy out of it is like Hogwarts houses.
Ooh.
So I know, which makes it sound cooler than it is. But basically there's 4 main colleges and then one kind of small one that people care about less, to be honest. It's just smaller, and that's why. So in each of the colleges is like a residence. You have Lady Eaton, Champlain, Zowski, and Otonabee, and then the smaller one is Trail. And so you live in Lady Eaton College, which is your residence, but there's like multiple buildings in that area. So, for example, if you lived at like Zowski, it's just one huge building, but then like Champlain, it's a whole bunch of small buildings.
So
yeah,
are all
cool.
of those like on campus and close together?
So yeah, all the four main colleges are on campus and close together, and then Trail is off campus, and then they also have annexes, which are suite accommodations. So when you have like your big bathroom and your kitchen and like that kind of stuff, which are they're technically off campus, but they're like maybe a 5-minute walk.
Oh,
So
so
it's
they're still
literally like
pretty
the traffic light outside of the school. It's like right across the road from the main campus.
Do you think there's such a thing as a bad room? If so, which one?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. I personally think Autonomy is trash.
Oh no,
Like,
why?
I think it's the worst dining hall because each college has their own dining hall too. Um, and then I also say this as a disclaimer of never having been in an Autonomy room, but like they're the only rooms with like 3 people, I'm pretty sure. So it's like a bunk bed and then a single, and it's
Oh
very
my gosh.
cramped and small.
3 people,
And
that's
it's
crazy.
yeah, and it's just like it's like small and it's not in a nice. It's like in a nice part of the campus, but it's not. I don't know. It just seems like you kind of live in a weird basement with a lot of stairs, whereas like for Champlain or Lady Eaton, for example, like Champlain, you live right beside the river, or for Lady Eaton, you live right beside this huge like forested area. Um, so that's just my opinion, and I did not live in Autonomy, so I feel like I should put a disclaimer on that. But yeah,
What were some good things about Lady Eaton?
um, definitely the people, which I know is like varied year to year, but um, generally Lady Eaton is seen as like maybe more of like a quote unquote boring college where like more studious people go, which is kind of my cup of tea because I didn't want to live in a very like party-ish res because I really value that 8 hours of sleep every night. So that was definitely a plus. But then also, um, it has really lovely common spaces. It has this big room called the Pit, and it's like all blue, and it's like I don't know if you know what like a 70s like I think they were like a thing in the 70s. They're like conversation pits.
Oh
And
yeah,
so
okay.
kind of like, yeah, it like goes into the floor and there's just like really nice couches and like plush seating and like there's this huge fireplace and stuff like that. Um, and then they have like the junior common room where there's like a pool table and like a kitchen and computer space and like literally the most comfortable couches I've ever sat on in my life. So that's pretty sweet. And then also at the back, so literally like a 2-second walk from my door, they have there's like a drumlin, which is like a big hill basically with like, it's just like a forested area with hiking trails and stuff. So literally
Nice.
every morning before class, I would go on a hike.
Wow.
And that was a pretty solid way to start my morning because you get to like a lookout and it looks over the campus and Trent runs, or rather like the Autonomy River runs right through Trent. So you get like this great view of the river, of like the surrounding countryside, and it's, I don't know. I'm a bit of a forest gal, so yeah, it's a really wonderful thing to have in your backyard.
Yeah. You said that each college kind of has a like stereotype or something that maybe Lady Eaton was boring. Do you know what the other ones are?
Yeah, Champlain is definitely the party college.
Okay.
Autonomy, I know less about Autonomy and Zowski, but Autonomy has a reputation of being this like a smarter college just because, which is incorrect, but this is the stereotype, and I apologize, but it's based in the science complex, so a lot of science students choose to live there because it's right by their lecture halls and labs and stuff. So you get a lot of science students living in Autonomy. And then also, stereotypes are harmful, but the Zowski College, it's the most expensive one because it is really nice. It has these like cool double beds, and you only share a bathroom like with one other person. And its cafeteria has like brie and apple grilled cheese
Oh my
sandwiches.
gosh.
So it's a little bougie. So it's kind of classified as like the rich kid college, which is not like 100% the case, but like that's the stereotype.
Yeah, I'm sure none of them are totally true, but just like so you know if you were picking one, like kind of
Yeah.
what the general ideas are. You said that their food at Zosky was really good. Was it okay in Lady Eaton as well?
Yeah, I personally, I have a low standard for food. I've learned since moving out of my home. Apparently, my parents were not good cooks, is what I've learned in the past couple of years. So sorry, Mom and Dad. But I loved the food at the Lady Eaton Cafe. Um, it's very much like a home cooked meal kind of a vibe. So there's like a salad bar that's set up all the time, and then for every lunch and every dinner, they have like the special, which is like maybe one day it's spaghetti, and then the next night it's tacos, and they have a meat version and then like a vegan version, which is really nice. And then they also have like a running menu. They'll have like pizza always available and like baked goods and like a small menu of like hamburger, grilled cheese, little chicken sandwiches, that kind of stuff too. So it's got lots of good selection. But the thing is, you can eat at whatever cafe you want. So if I want to go eat at Zoski, I can do that. Or, if I have a class in Champlain, then I can just pop into the Champlain dining hall. So.
And were they all like pretty big and had multiple options?
Yeah. Yeah, they all have the same like solid like menu, like the cheese sandwiches and the chicken salad and whatnot. And then not within the Champlain Cafe, but in the same building, they have a Seasoned Spoon, which is like a really cool. It's an all vegan, vegetarian little co-op cafe. So it's like really cheap food, but it's really good, and it's like got like vegetables and stuff, so it's healthy. And that's definitely my favorite place to eat on campus because it's like really cheap for what you're getting, and it's really good. And they have really good vegan like baked goods too, which I know sometimes is like a toss up whether your vegan cookie is gonna be tasty or not, but it's like it's always delightful.
You said that place is really cheap. Do you pay for it on like the same account as you do to pay at the regular dining halls?
Yeah, so I'll talk about that now. The way your meal plan is set up is really cool. There's like two different sections to it. It's like your regular meal plan and then something called Trent Cash. And you pay with it all on your student card, which is a very powerful thing. So if I'm getting a lunch at Lady Eaton, I just tap my card and that goes off my meal plan. But say if I want food at the Seasoned Spoon, I go and I pay with that. I think it's either your meal plan or Trent Cash. I'm a little foggy on the details. But basically what that means is that you can eat anywhere on campus with your Trent card. So if you want to go to the Tim Hortons, for example, that's in the Autonomy Cafe, that's paid with your Trent Cash. And it just gets absorbed that way rather than having to like pay with debit. And same if you want to go to the Seasoned Spoon, you can pay there. There's another little like cafe kind of thing in the athletic center where you can use your Trent Cash as well. But there's also restaurants downtown that have partnered with Trent University that you can use your Trent Cash for. So there's like a Subway downtown, there's Osmos, there's a bunch of like local eateries, like there's a place called Hot Belly Mama's and the Cork and Bean, which is like a really cute coffee shop. And like all these different places. So it's really cool because when you're in first year, you're like, I don't know what the good places are. So you can use your meal plan. And also if you're like poor, like I was, you can use your meal plan to like have a night out with friends, and it's really sweet that way.
Yeah. If you do have money left over at the end of the year, does it roll over into the next?
Yeah. So if you have money left over on the meal plan side, it goes to your Trent Cash. So then it's just all Trent Cash. And I should say you also use that to pay for laundry in first year. But then, yeah, so in entering second year, I had a bunch of money left over, which was nice because then I rarely like cooked a lunch for myself during the day. I would just get food on campus. But then you can also use your Trent Cash to like buy stuff at the bookstore. So oh God, sorry, I almost fell on my chair there.
Just so excited about the bookstore.
I am so excited about the bookstore. So if you need to buy books from the bookstore, you can use your Trent Cash for that, which is super useful because also this year, because of COVID, I couldn't go into the school and, I didn't have labs and stuff, so I wasn't buying my lunches and whatnot. But I had a whole bunch of Trent Cash left over, so I just bought myself a nice sweater at the bookstore and kind of, because you can't transfer that money like back to your bank account, so you can use it. I just like bought myself a couple, and my roommates, like we had a nice little like take-in from one of the places downtown. And then like I bought myself a nice sweater, and then I used up the rest of the Trent Cash instead of it just being like given to Trent, and I never get that money back. So that was pretty sweet.
So is the bookstore on campus?
Yeah, it's right in the middle of campus, so.
Can you describe the campus layout for people that haven't been?
Yes, sorry, I guess that's not really helpful.
No.
So, like I said, the Tomby River runs right through the middle. So there's a big bridge that goes across it that separates the campus into West Bank and East Bank. So on West Bank, that's where the bookstore is. And West Bank, Best Bank, because that's where Lady Eaton College is. So you've got Lady Eaton and Champlain there. You've got the library, the athletic center, Blackburn Hall, which is like a lot of the administration stuff and where you go to like get your bus pass or a parking pass and stuff like that. Yeah, so that's all in West Bank. And and the student center, sorry, which is just like a big study space, and it's got like some lecture halls and a Starbucks and like that kind of stuff. And some offices, I guess. So that's all on West Bank. And within Lady Eaton College and Champlain, and all the colleges, I guess, there are lecture halls, so they're like kind of scattered around, and seminar rooms and all that stuff. And then on East Bank, you've got the Environmental Science Complex, which is got a whole bunch of labs and offices and a wind tunnel and all this cool environmental stuff. You've got the Science Complex, which is just more of the same of lectures and stuff like that. The Chemical Science Building. You've got Zowski and Autonomy College. You've got the DNA Building, which is where a lot of labs take place and where a lot of professors have their like own personal laboratories as well. And then you've got the Vegetable Garden. A lot of the food that the Seasoned Spoon uses actually comes from that vegetable garden, which is pretty cool. And you can like volunteer there and stuff. And it's just like a really neat vegetable garden. And there's a couple baseball diamonds and stuff like that as well. And then as well on East Bank, you have the First People's House of Learning, which is, I guess, kind of like the base camp for like Indigenous studies, because we have a really good Indigenous studies program. Yeah, that's all of Trent. It's a very small campus, but it's got a lot packed into it.
Yeah, so it's completely separated from like non-campus related things, right?
Yeah, it's about, like I said, from my house, it's about a 10-minute drive, or bus drive, and it's about a 15 to 20-minute bus drive from downtown.
Nice. And downtown for Peterborough, what does that mean? How hoppin' is the city of Peterborough?
Well, I'm from a small town, so when I first moved, I thought it was pretty poppin'. And I still think it is, to be honest with you. It's really beautiful in the summer. I mean, in the winter too, I guess, but the summer it's especially nice because there's a lot of greenery in Peterborough, and the downtown is also right by the river. So you've got like a really nice park that walks with like bike paths and stuff like that, where you can walk along the river. And the downtown, I'd say, is generally nice. Like, there's a lot of really nice places to eat. There's a lot of vegan and veggie options. Quite a few nice, it is like a lot of students there, so there's a lot of nice bars. It is a bit sketchy from my standpoint, just as a small town person. There is a bit of a sketchy crowd, but I think that's kind of the case in every city. It's just something that comes with the territory.
I just remembered when you were talking about what's on, I think, the second bank that you're talking about, I think the East Bank. Am I right? You said wind tunnel in the environmental science area, and I still don't want to let that go because I want to know what that is.
Oh no, okay, I only said it because they had this thing on Friday. It was like a Zoom thing where it was like, come find out about our wind tunnel. And I've always walked past it and been like, what is this? And so I've been intrigued for 4 years.
Now I'm intrigued.
And I forgot to go, and now it's just like this huge mystery that I'll never understand.
So we don't know what the wind tunnel is. So anyone who's considering Trent, go and let me know what the wind tunnel is.
Yeah, I do haven't, like, I understand what it's like a place to do experiments with wind. Like, I can give you that much information, but, like, I don't know what that means.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So what is your program?
I'm in a double major with environmental science and biology.
Are most of your environmental science classes in one environmental science building?
No, actually, which is kind of nice. Because Trent's so small, it's not a big deal if your building or your class is in one building or the other, because you can get anywhere within like 20 minutes tops. So like a good portion of my classes are in the environmental science building, but I also have classes in DNA, and I'll have lectures in like the Zowski lecture halls or in the student center. So it's it's spread around nicely, but I do spend a good deal of time in the labs in the environmental science building.
And how did you end up being a double major?
That comes from me being very bad at making decisions. So in first year, I got into Trent in as a general science degree. That's like what I applied to enter in, I guess. And then by the end of first year, I was like, okay, I'm very certain I want to do environmental science. I kind of knew that going in, but I was too scared to pull the plug on it. So I switched my major to environmental science at the end of first year. And switching your major, it sounds like something scary, but it's literally so easy. The first time I went in to academic advising, which is kind of like a guidance counselor, and I went in, I was like, can you help me switch my major? And they were like, sure. And they pressed like 3 buttons, and it was like done. And I was like, oh, okay. And they showed me how to do it myself, because you can literally just go on like the website and be like, boop, 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 and then
Thank you for
sorry,
the
that
sound
was
effects.
computer noises. That was making computer noises, and switch your major. So you can literally do it as many times as you want. So then in second
Do you
year,
suggest that? Constantly changing your major?
No, I changed my major maybe like 3 times.
Okay.
Yeah, so because I switched then, I decided I wanted to minor in biology because I really liked
Mm-hmm.
plants and trees. And then I realized I was like, it's just easier to get more jobs in the environmental or the biology field if you're a double major, because it seems like you know more about both. So then I switched to a double major, and that's my story.
Okay. And what kind of classes are you taking for each of them? Like, can you give me a little run through, maybe some favorites and least favorites that you've had to take?
Yeah. My favorite course by far was a field course in Barbados. Yeah. So you only, it's a very like small class, and it's in the environmental side of it. And you like apply the year before, and during the semester you do a lot of work and readings on Barbados and the environmental resources they have there, and like the water. They have a lot of water quality issues and overfishing and stuff like that. So you get a bunch of really good background on it. And then during the reading week of the fall, you spend the whole week in Barbados doing a whole bunch of field stuff. We visited like this like beautiful coastline. We went on a submarine, which was literally probably the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. And like we went boating, and we did like a coral reef sampling survey, and all this really amazing stuff. And it was really cool because the profs were very chill, and the class was only 12 people, so you got to know those people really well. And then you like finish off the year by doing some assignments about like, what did I learn in Barbados? But you know, a little bit more scientific than that.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a highlight for me. I also really enjoyed, in my third year, I did a forestry and a wetlands class. So the wetlands class was a lot of field work as well. We went out to like a peat wetland, which is just like very squishy mud. So you're like walking in it, and you're like bouncing back, and like sometimes you sink into it a little bit, but mostly you're okay. And it's really cool because I'm going to get a little nerdy here, but you shove these huge cores into the ground, and you like twist them around, and then you pull them back up, kind of like ice cores. And there's like peat inside of them, which is just like mud. And that peat is like 300 years old. So then you're holding this mud in your hand, and to anybody not there, they're like, if somebody was like looking at that lab from the outside, they'd be like, these weirdos are holding just mud in your hands, but you're holding like 300-year-old mud, which is pretty cool. Which maybe doesn't sound that interesting from the expression on your face, but I think it's cool.
So if you're the type of person who thinks that 300-year-old mud is cool, then definitely look into this program.
Honestly, even if you don't think that 300-year-old mud is cool, I think you should take that course, and then it'll prove you wrong.
Oh.
And so it'll be a learning experience for you. So yeah, any course that I took where it had like really cool labs, like in forestry, we got to do a whole bunch of tree surveys, where it's basically just out in the woods, walking around, looking at trees and assessing them basically, which is really cool. And then for least favorite courses, I had to take like a cell bio class as part of like the requirements, and that's just really not my cup of tea. I'm sure it could have been interesting, but it's not something that I personally have any interest in, and it's when you're out like looking at trees 1 second in a lab, and then you're in a lecture or like looking through a microscope, I'm like, I got no interest in this, sorry. So that was definitely probably my least favorite class.
It sounds like you really just enjoyed all the ones that let you go outside and be hands-on. How
Yes,
much
100%.
how much would you say, or how early on in your studies did you get to do a lot more of that type of stuff?
Um, in first year, they do a pretty good job of introducing you to doing field work, um, in both the biology and the environmental side, in like the ecology-based biology classes. Um, it is a little bit more tame in first year because they're like, we got to make sure these people aren't like ridiculous and doing. They don't want to throw you into the deep end, I guess. But because Trent is surrounded by green space, like we have the river, we have the drumlin, we have a whole swath of like nature areas and stuff like that. So it's really easy to just like walk 10 seconds outside the classroom to like a field site and do a lab outside. So they really, like the profs and the course coordinators take advantage of that. I'd say in second year, first semester is where they picked up the pace and they were like, okay, time to do some field work. Um, in one of my environmental science classes, like every lab, we were outside sampling trees, or we took water samples. We made like precipitation like catchment things to monitor the rainfall and to see like how acid rain was impacting the drumlin and all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely, they ease you into it in a way that doesn't make it seem scary or like nerve wracking, but you definitely get a lot of good field experience.
So would you say that a lot of the stuff that you're evaluated on is also things that you're doing outside, like more experimental type stuff?
Um, a portion of your grade is like participation in the lab, so that you're not, so that you actually show up and that you can prove that you can, do a titration or measure the diameter of a tree and stuff like that. Um, but like most of your grade actually comes from the write up of that lab report. So usually with the lab, they're like, okay, write up. It's usually like a formal lab report, or say maybe if it's a more relaxed lab, it's like answer these questions, and that's where your grade actually comes from.
Yeah. And what about, you were talking about the professors really take advantage of that. Do you find that in other ways they've been like good to students? Do you think they are want to see you succeed?
Yeah, 100%. Honestly, I think with like 99% of my profs, they they show like a vested interest, and they're not like going out to try and make you fail this class, and they take suggestions. They're like, oh, you didn't like the way that lab was run, like okay, let's switch it a little bit so that it works for students a bit more. And like if you ask for an extension, it's usually not a big deal. They're like, yeah, sure, why not? um, and they're very relaxed about that kind of thing, which is very nice. And I'd say like the other 1% of my profs, it's not that they don't care about you, and it's not like they're actively hating you. They're just like, yeah, okay. They're just kind of like they're neutral. You know what I mean? Which is fine, honestly, because the thing with university profs, which I think some people have the misconception of, they're not there to teach. Most of them, they're there to do their research, and teaching is something that they have to do. So a lot of the times, profs can be kind of grumpy. um,
Yeah.
if students are bugging them too much. But I haven't really found that that's the case with Trent, because it's such a big undergraduate university, which means there's a lot of teaching that goes on, that profs are really receptive to students, and like office hours, they're very open and very relaxed, and like they're there to answer your questions, and they're happy to do that.
Did you find, like, do they know you by name? Especially by now that your classes are smaller?
Um, Definitely some of my profs do. I will say I am a bit of a shy student though, so I don't actively seek out for my professors to know my name. Um, but like the people I know who are more outgoing in my program, they do have a very good rapport with the profs, and like even though I don't actively like seek out relationships with my profs, they do know me, and they'll like say hi in the hallway and stuff like that.
Aw.
Pre-COVID, they would say hi in the hallway.
Yes. How big are your kind of classes now that you're in fourth year? I know the Barbados one is 12 people, but other than that.
Yeah, I think it might be altered a little bit because of Zoom University. That it's a bit bigger than it normally would be. But I'd say my lectures themselves, there may be 30 to 40 students, max. And then my seminars or the labs that I'm in, it's like 10 to 20 kids, or students, I guess. And definitely in first year, like my classes were bigger, which is just goes with the territory because it's like the big first year classes. But it was never like, I've never had a lab situation or a seminar situation where you have to have like one-on-one communication with like your teachers and stuff, where it's I've had more than 20 or 30 students with me in the lab, which is about the same as a high school lab, I guess. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. When you say you went in to first year in general science, what type of like curriculum did you have to follow in first year to like meet the like requirements? I don't know.
It was pretty open because I think the goal of general sciences is not to bog you down with a whole bunch of requirements, but for a science degree at Trent, you need one math credit, which is so 2 math classes, basically. So I took statistics for the whole year, and then I don't know about general requirements. I think it's just like you have to take a certain amount of science credits for the general program, and I could be wrong because I'm no longer in it. But I chose to take like first year environmental science and biology and chemistry, and then I took a geography and then an indigenous studies class.
Yeah, and you applied to general science at Trent. Did you apply to any other schools?
Yeah, I applied to Waterloo, Guelph, and Queens.
And why did you choose Trent in the end?
Um, I definitely, my mom was very adamant in grade 12 that we go and actually visit each university. So when I like set foot on the Trent campus, I was just like, okay, yeah, this is where I'm supposed to go. Like, it wasn't like it was a logical decision, but it's not like I can say like what my exact brain was thinking. It was just like, yes, this is it, because it's such a beautiful campus and it feels homey while also it's like surrounded by nature, and I really felt comfortable there right away. Whereas with like Waterloo and Queens, I felt very intimidated by like the huge buildings, and like it's a very like science-y competitive atmosphere as well as Queens. And I realized I didn't really want a competitive atmosphere for my undergrad because I wasn't trying to compete with anybody. I wanted a space where I could feel like I could get along with my peers and I wasn't fighting to like get my grades. I could go to my profs and not feel absolutely terrified asking them a question. So the small Trent atmosphere where it's very community based, and I think the college system helps with that too because you feel very close with the people who are in your college. I think that really steered me in that direction, as well as Trent is known very well for its environmental program. They have a really good program, and in grade 12 I wasn't sure I wanted to do environmental science, but I was pretty sure I was leaning in that direction, so I took that into account. And then also at Trent they have a great fencing team, which was definitely something I considered as well.
Have you joined the fencing team?
Heck yeah, I have. So I've been fencing since I was like 13 years old, so it's definitely something that I wanted to keep doing in university, because that's like a weird thing to just stop doing something that you've been doing for so long. So while I was visiting all those schools in grade 12, I like sat down with a lot of the fencing teams and asked them questions. Well, I didn't do the talking, my mom did because I was terrified. To get to know their program and stuff. And I got different vibes from each of the teams, and the Trent team, I will say, like, made me the most comfortable. Like, the coach made it very clear from the beginning, like, while, they want you to do well at competitions and they want you to, see results, she's much more focused on your individual skill development and your confidence as a fencer and, how, and just like that kind of thing in general. And that I kind of guess goes with the energy I was getting from Trent. I didn't want a huge competitive team where I was going to feel threatened if I wasn't the epee captain, for example, which is like it's a captain position. And so I felt really comfortable with the Trent team, and I joined in first year. And it was like definitely such a valuable experience. Like when you go to competitions with people, you spend the whole weekend in the hotel with the team, and you form a lot of really good bonds. And you form relationships with people in older years, and people in upper years. So I made a lot of friends who were in third or fourth year, and that was really beneficial as a first year for them to be like, to give advice and to kind of mentor you a little bit. And as I grew up in the team and like took on more leadership responsibilities, like as the president and as the epee captain now, I got to do that, and I got to like mentor younger years, and I thought that was a really cool experience that I don't know if I would have gotten if I didn't go to Trent.
Yeah, first of all, congratulations on being the captain. Second of all, what's it like to be a student athlete at Trent? Are there really good like gym type of facilities and things like that?
The athletic center is definitely small, but so is Trent. So it's not usually a big problem. It's not like you're crammed for space. But I think, and if you're a gym rat, I think you'll definitely like get what you need out of it. But it's not like the nicest gym in the world, but it's got what you need. For fencing practices themselves, we have like the gym, like where the basketball hoops are and whatnot, to do our practices, and they give us like cabinet space to hold our equipment and stuff like that. So that's really nice. Sorry, it's been so long since I've been to the gym just because of COVID. I'm trying to think.
Do you get like a pass as a student to the regular gym?
Oh yeah, it comes like with your tuition. You're paying for a gym pass, so you just have to tap your card, and then you get in, and you have access to like all of the cardio machines, all of the weight machines, the pool, as well as like the sauna and whatnot. And they have open gym times, which is like people like go and play basketball, or they set up like a badminton net and stuff like that, or they just use the space to like do free weight exercises and like body exercises and stuff like that. And then there's a bunch of fitness classes as well. Like they host like yoga things and like booty boot camps and kickboxing and all that stuff. And that's another thing that you can get into as well.
Yeah, that sounds
And there's
fun.
squash courts, I guess I should mention.
Ooh. And do you find that Trent students in general have a lot of like, I don't know, spirit, like Trent Team spirit? What is the mascot?
Our mascot is the Excalibur, like King Arthur's sword.
Okay.
Which I will admit is pretty lame as far as mascots go, because it's a sword. But I'd say like...
I mean, it's good for a fencing team.
Yeah, I know. We've said that before. We're like, they did this for us.
Yeah.
So like while we do definitely have like Trent spirit as a school, I'd say most of the spirit comes as like a college spirit. So I'd say I have more Lady Eden spirit than Trent spirit. And each of the colleges have their own mascot. Like the Lady Eaton mascot is a toad. The Champlain mascot is a gorilla. And during O week, which is like our frosh week, like you learn all these chants and these songs, and you get a real sense of like connectedness with your college and pride in your college and stuff. And I think that's where most of the spirit comes from.
How did you find the O week experience? Like, did Trent as a whole do a good job of welcoming new students?
So I really enjoyed O week. I think they did a good job of providing like information and stuff like that. And they had like seminars and information sessions of like, this is how to not fail in first year.
Helpful.
And you go into these little pods with like a group of older students who act as kind of like your mentors for the week, and they give you tours of the campus, and they kind of like guide you and make sure you kind of are comfortable with the school and stuff like that. And our O week leaders did a really nice thing where they took us on a tour of downtown as well, which was super beneficial. I thank them so much for that, because it showed us how to use the buses for the first time, which can be a little intimidating if you're into a new bus system and you're not really sure what the heck is going on. And they showed us like some of the nice places to eat. Just kind of like showed us like, this is how you get here. Like, never take this bus because it takes 40 minutes to get to school, versus take this bus, it only takes 20 minutes. So it was really helpful. But then they also, during O week, like they had like the regular parties and like the stuff that people actually care about. I will say we definitely don't have as many like boppin' raves as maybe like Western organizers and stuff like that. We definitely don't have like Down with Webster come into our school or anything like that, but you still have a good time.
Yeah. About like social life, what kind of things do people do in general to kind of have a nightlife? Like, is there nearby clubs, pubs, bars, or is it more like residence parties type of thing?
In first year, it's definitely a lot of res parties, because a lot of people aren't 18 yet, or 19, sorry. And the annexes are usually where that happens, because it's like I said, the residences on campus are usually like the single or double rooms where it's just kind of like your beds and your desks, but the suites in the annexes have like a kitchen and living space and stuff like that. So that's where a lot of the first year parties happen. And then like when you're legal and stuff, there's definitely really nice bars to go to downtown. And then house parties still happen like in upper years, and that's more my cup of tea personally, because I don't have to spend $7 on a drink because I'm cheap. So it's a good mix of both. I think there's something for everybody. Okay.
In terms of social life, do you have any kind of suggestions for people that might be worried about how to make friends coming in as a first year if they maybe didn't know anyone?
Mm-hmm. That was definitely me in first year. I didn't know anybody going in. I think one of the things that helped me the most, because I think it's come across in this interview that I'm not the most outgoing person, is having a roommate. Because I was lucky that my roommate was very extroverted, so she made all these friends, and then I was just kind of absorbed into the friend group, which was very nice. Because once again, I did very little of the work, and I did like those people, and they have become like very good friends. But I didn't have to actually like get super scared and have to like introduce myself to people. So having a roommate, because then it's also you have like almost like a mandatory friend. And during O-week activities, there's some stuff that you like don't have to do, but it's optional. So they did like a 5K fun color run, and then like canoeing and on like the in the morning on the river and stuff like that. And I really wanted to do those things, but I was too scared to do it by myself. So I was like, "Hey, roommate, want to do these things with me?" And she was like, "Yeah." So then you're not as scared doing things because you have a little buddy to go with you. And then also say in first year in labs and seminars and stuff, it's very difficult to talk to people because everybody's just scared and they don't know what's happening. But if you just like talk to the people at your lab bench and like you're all first year, none of you know what's happening. Like make an effort to be friends with them because that's also friends that are going to be in your program and probably or hopefully will be in your program for all your 4 years. And so it's really beneficial to have those friends, not just for notes and study sessions and stuff like that, but also if you want advice on what courses to take or you have a support that's not necessarily in your main friend group and it's someone outside of it that you can like talk to about very specific stuff to your program. And then I'd also say joining clubs is a really good way to make friends. That's definitely something that happened with me on the fencing team is I was able to make or like get a really good community of people from that.
Yeah, what kind of ways are there to find clubs to join or to find student organizations?
So during like the first couple of weeks, Trent has like a clubs and groups day, which is this huge event, and a whole bunch of tables get set out on the Bata podium, which is like this big um, open space, I guess, outside of the library. And it's all the clubs and groups. They come and they set up their posters and whatnot, and there's representatives, and they talk to you about the clubs, and you get to kind of see what's out there. And then I would say following their social medias is a really good thing to do too. Even if you're not like super invested in the club, you don't have to be like a full-time member for some things if you want. You can just go to activities. For example, there's an outdoors club, so the Trent Outdoor Club, and they'll like run a hike every now and then. So you can just show up to the hike and talk to people and go on a hike. Or they'll do like reading week canoe trips that you can sign up for as well and stuff like that. And that's a really good way to like make friends because that's someone with like a similar interest to you. Not everybody wants to go on a hike at 6 o'clock in the morning. I learned in my first year, but there are people that do, and if you find those people, you'll be happy.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like you've given us a really good view of kind of like Trent life, but I still want to hear more about specifically environmental science and about biology. So let's talk about those. First of all, how structured is it? As in, like, how many classes are like you must take this exact class for each of those majors versus like how much space do you have either to take one from like a bucket of different classes or just completely a choice?
I'll talk to environmental science first and then biology because you can't really discuss both at the same time.
Yeah.
So for environmental science, there's a couple of required courses that are mostly in first and second year. So there's just like your run-of-the-mill introduction to environmental science. And then in second year, they focus a lot on like your field and your lab skills. So there's a couple required courses in that way where it's like making sure you have those field skills down and those like lab skills and whatnot. And then the way they do it for the rest of the programs in third and fourth year and as well, they have like kind of 4 categories of like, here are your, experiential kind of classes, here are your policy courses, and you have to say like take 3 out of each category or something to that effect. It's not that, but it's like take 3 from category A, 1 from category D, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So it gives you a lot of options and it guides you as well. So you're not just like, sure, I'll take a wetlands class. I don't know really what I'm going for, but it makes sure you have like a well-rounded education while still giving you the freedom to choose for yourself. So I got a lot of good education in a lot of different things because of the categories, but I still got to choose what interested me most. For example, for like the policy and environmental studies category, I wasn't super interested in like climate change policy itself, but I was really interested in Indigenous environmental science, which was another thing in that category. So I got to pick that class over the policy one. So I still got to take something that interested me. And then again, you have to take that math credit, but that counts for both your biology and your environmental science side. Yeah, so on the biology side of things, it's pretty similar that in first year and second year, there's quite a few required courses just because they want to make sure you have like a base understanding so that you can actually do those third and fourth year classes. So it's like introduction to biology. In second year, there's like the classic ones like genetics, evolution, ecology, cell bio, like that kind of stuff. But then in third and fourth year, it opens right up. Like I really don't think there's any required courses for third and fourth year. It's just you have to take a certain amount of third and fourth year biology classes. So that's really nice because then it opens you up to your interests as well, because biology is not just like ecology. There's also like med sci and stuff like that. So the second year classes, like they're not necessarily ecology based. But when I got into third year, I was like, okay, I only want to take ecology stuff that's related to like the environment because I don't really care about cell bio anymore. That's not my problem. So then you can choose like, I'm trying to think of like I took advanced ecology in third year and I took a lot of environmental science classes. I took biology of invasions, so like invasive species and behavioral ecology, which is like why animals have the behaviors that they do and why we see them, which is really cool.
Did you have any space left after taking 2 whole majors to take any like electives or stuff like that?
Yeah, I think I had like maybe like 1 or 2 electives a year. I think I just filled them with mostly environmental science or biology program classes anyways. I did take a couple like geography and indigenous study classes as electives, and I took an environmental history class that was technically like a history course, but it was really cool as well.
Yeah, cool. And do you know if Trent offers within either environmental science or biology like honors options or like co-op, or like what's the situation with study abroad? Is there chances to do stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's no co-op option. Oh, actually, that's not true. I think there's like I have not done one myself, so I can't say for certain, but I'm pretty sure how it works is that there are co-op and internships options for fourth year, but it's very much on your own head to organize that. So it's listed in the academic calendar, like the big list of courses, but you have to go find a company yourself or like set it up with whoever's in charge of that. So you have to take a lot of initiative to get that going. I also didn't do a study abroad, but I know people in the environmental science and biology programs who did, and they all really liked it. So I know it's out there, and we have a pretty solid like study abroad / like international office that I think is really helpful and that like can steer you in the right direction. And then in terms of like honors, did you mean like honors thesis?
Yeah, like anything, like do they offer, like I know there's different definitions. I know at some schools honors means just like a 4-year degree, and in others it means like you maintained a certain GPA or like did a undergrad thesis or like took a special research class. Like I don't know, everyone has a different definition of it.
Oh, okay. I think for Trent, honors means that it's a 4th-year program or a 4-year program. So I believe I think that's what it is. I'm in the honors environmental science and biology. Because I'm taking 4 years, and then I think it's like called a general if you do 3 years. Mm-hmm. I don't think you have to maintain a certain average for it to be called honors. I think you just need to maintain a certain average to graduate.
How hard would that be to maintain an average? First of all, how harsh have you found the grading? But also, how is it graded? Is it on a 4-point scale, 10-point scale, percentages?
It's percentages. So it's like at the end of the year, your grade is like an 88% or whatever. I find it definitely varies course by course, and it varies in between the environment and the biology departments because they're obviously separate. So it's interesting because as a student in 2 degrees, sometimes 2 majors, for if I'm doing a biology course, I kind of change how I'm writing things based on how I know they mark versus like an environment course.
What's
So
the
that's an
difference?
interesting. Pardon?
What's the difference? Like, how
Just
would you
in
change it?
just in some of like the nitty gritty requirements, like biology classes are a bit more strict in the way they want you to like structure your graphs, for example, or analyze this such and such a thing, or how the your formatting is. Where I find that the environmental science program, it doesn't really care as much about that, but it definitely focuses more on like um, it's more critical. I find the marking in the environmental science like department is a bit harsher or stricter than the biology one. So I tend to get better marks in biology than environmental science. Or maybe I'm just better at biology. I don't know. That's just what I found.
And was it kind of the workload that you were expecting going in?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely, it very much changes year to year. So first year, it's a lot of smaller assignments and quizzes. So your grade is more broken up. And then as you progress through the years, you'll have bigger assignments, but there's less of them. So you might have an assignment worth 30 or 40% or 20%, and you have just a couple of those rather than in first year where you had like 10 assignments and they're all worth like 5% or something like that.
Interesting. Yeah. And for either biology or environmental science, what kind of, or if there's any, is there any specific equipment that you need to be in that program? Like either stuff for labs or stuff to complete your assignments or anything?
For some of the environmental science stuff, sometimes you need a lab coat and like safety goggles, and you can get both of them at the bookstore. And I'm pretty sure you can also just rent them from like the environmental science office if you don't want to buy them. So you can just borrow them for the lab period. But they're just nice to have because like I took chemistry classes as well, and those like required them. Um, and then any of like the field equipment that you need, like a tape measure or like a canopy cover sighter or anything like that, it's just like comes like the department gives it to you for the lab, and then you give it back to them. So like anytime I've had to borrow a compass or whatever for a lab, I go to the guy's office, knock on the door, they're like, "What class are you in?" I'm like, "This one." They're like, "Have it back by such and such a time," and then you give it back. So it's like other than that, and I will say also with textbooks, because I know that's like a big concern for a lot of people. The environmental classes I've taken, they usually don't require textbooks because the field changes so often. So that's really nice, just from like a money standpoint. And then the biology office or department, like they do typically require textbooks, but I will say you can like get by without them or finding PDFs online and stuff too.
Yeah. And do you find, you mentioned like an office for each of those, like are there services like tutoring or other services offered by the specific, I don't know, faculties, departments for students within it?
Yeah, so each department has like an office administrator kind of person. And for both the environmental and biology, I will say they're literally wonderful people. They're two ladies, and I love them so much because they've helped me out with a lot of just random like administration kind of stuff that's popped up over the years. And they're both very lovely and very helpful to students, and not at all like grouchy when you have a stupid question. And then in terms of tutoring, it's not run by like the university department itself, but there's like student programs that are like the biology undergraduate society runs biology tutoring. And so you just you contact them, and if you want tutoring, you can be like, "Hey, do you have a tutor for me?" And then it's upper year students who have probably taken that class before that get matched with that student, and then they have a little meeting session. It picks up a lot during exams and midterms, and it's a really nice program because it's very chill too. Like you're not required to do it at all, and it's not like if you literally just want to chat to someone. Like I've been a tutor before, and we like chatted about like the midterm for a little bit, and then she was like, "I'm just really struggling with like such and such a thing." So it's as much a tutoring service as like a kind of just like a mentor support kind of program. It's just nice to talk to someone sometimes.
Yeah, that's super nice. Do you have advice for people who are kind of on the fence but are considering either Trent or science at Trent or science anywhere, I guess?
Yeah. If you're considering science at Trent, I think it's a really good program, especially the environment and the biology side, particularly if you're interested in environmental science or ecology-based stuff, because a lot of the profs that we have here are ecologists or botanists or conservation biologists their passion lies in the subject that they're teaching you, which is really beneficial, because if you have someone, like if you have a cell bio prof who doesn't really know what's going on with ecology and they're trying to teach it to you, that passion doesn't come across and it's going to be a terrible course. But if you have a conservation biologist who has been in the field for like 30 years and they're teaching you conservation biology, it's going to be a really fun course because they're going to have experiences from the field and all this crazy knowledge to share with you that's actually like hands-on and it's actually related to the field, and it's not just some stuffy prof being like, oh, I think this. So you definitely get, like, especially with environment and biology, you get profs who are passionate about the subject, which I think is really something to be spoken for. And then if you're considering Trent, I would say you should just go to Trent. But to be more fair, I think you should definitely still consider all your options. But I think the most important things about Trent is that it is that smaller community and that you're going to get that community feel, and that it's such a beautiful campus. And I think going to the campuses themselves is what helped me the most in deciding where I wanted to go, because sometimes things just feel right. And as a scientist, that sounds kind of silly to say, to just be like, sometimes it just feels like you should go there. But I generally, like I said, when I stepped on the Trent campus, I was like, this is somewhere where I can call home for the next 4 years, and that where I'm going to be happy. And that sounds very sappy, but I stand by it.
No, but it's cute.
Cute.
Since you are in your 4th year, do you kind of have ideas or plans? I don't want to ask if this is a touchy subject. I feel like it is for some people, but do you know what you're doing after this?
That is a terrifying question, so thank you for asking. I know a lot of people choose to do a master's after their undergrad in the sciences, but I personally am not choosing to do that, because if I do a master's, I think I want to break from school first, and I want to do something that I'm like truly passionate about, and I haven't found that thing that I want to spend 2 years of my life studying yet. So I'm going to take a little break from school and try and find just some jobs in the Peterborough area in my field. So whether that's environmental education or, maybe helping out in a lab or at like an environmental non-government organization, like a kind of charity kind of operation. Hopefully I can just find something like that. And then down the road, I'm hopefully planning on moving to BC, because that's where my sisters are right now. So there's a lot of environmental opportunities out there as well. So hopefully I'll find something. I'll cross my fingers.
Wow, but for now you're staying in Peterborough, so you must like the city enough.
Yes, that's a very fair point. If I've stayed here this long, it must mean something.
Exactly. Thinking back on your 4 years, and I guess slightly before that too, from your decision in high school all the way till now, if you were to do it again, is there anything that you think you would do differently?
That's a very interesting question.
It's a very deep question.
That's something I feel like I'm gonna get back to you in like a week and be like, I thought of something, because I feel like that deserves a bit of thought. But I don't think I have any major regrets, which I think is a really lovely thing to be able to say.
Yeah.
I think just being a little bit more confident in my decisions, I think would have been helpful for me. Like I think I knew in grade 12 that I wanted to do environmental science, but I was just kind of too scared to just declare it, which seems silly. And to just kind of be confident in myself in that way. And I knew I wanted to go to Trent, but I was still like feeling all my options, and I accepted the Trent offer very late, which I don't know, it's not like really a big deal, but it just gave me less time to be excited about going to Trent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and things I've heard a lot in the last year, it's like your undergrad is important, yes, but it's not important where you get your undergrad, if that makes sense. Especially if you're in the sciences and you're looking to do a master's and a PhD and that kind of stuff after, which is a lot, which is like a pretty popular option. A lot of people aren't like, you did your undergrad at Trent? Like, God. Like, your undergrad is your undergrad. It's a pretty solid degree wherever you get it from. So maybe don't focus on the reputation of the school or, how big the school is and that kind of thing. Focus on what school, like, makes you feel comfortable and happy, and because that's what's going to be most important about the next 4 years.
Yeah, I really like that. Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for coming on and sharing all of this knowledge.
I feel like an old, wise person.
Not that old, but pretty wise.
Thank you.
If people have other questions about either Trent or environmental science or biology or Peterborough, I guess, since you seem to be kind of a master. Or fencing. Oh my gosh, so true. If they have questions about any of those, is there somewhere that they can contact you?
Yeah. I have an email address. It's shocker, I know. It's rachel.gilham@coachco.ca.
I'll put it in the description.
Okay, yeah, that works. That works a lot.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. This was so fun.
Okay, thanks again so much to Rachel for coming on the podcast, and thank you guys so much for listening. Remember, you can contact her by email if you have any more questions, and you can also get in touch with the show by emailing contact.cuepodcast@gmail.com. That's contact.cuepodcast@gmail.com if you have comments, questions, requests, or if you'd like to come on the show. Finally, subscribe to the podcast if you want to hear upcoming episodes where I will be bringing on students from other schools and in other programs.